What's going on, and welcome to the Solo Shot. My name is Tom Vecchio. We have a 13-game MLB slate tonight. Lock is set for 7:05. As always, this is one of the many shows on the FanDuel Podcast Network. You can find that anywhere, whether it's Spotify, whether it's Apple Podcasts, you name it. Make sure to give it a like, follow, or subscribe. Leave it a review. That'd be greatly appreciated. And you can follow me on Twitter at Tom_Vecchio1. Before we hop into things, snap into NFL action this season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action. The app is easy to use, and there's a wide range of betting options, including spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. So visit FanDuel.com and kick off the NFL season. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. Must be 21 plus and present in select states. FanDuel is offering online sports wagering in Kansas under an agreement with Kansas Star Casino, LLC. First online, real money, wager only, $10 first deposit required. Bonus issued as non-withdrawable bonus specs that expire 7 days after receipt. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit fanduel.com/RG in Colorado, Iowa, Michigan, New Jersey, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Illinois, Tennessee, or Virginia. Call 1-800-NEXT-STEP or text NEXT-STEP to 53342 in Arizona. Call 1-888-79-7777 or visit ccpg.org/chat in Connecticut. In Indiana, call 1-800-9-WITH-IT. Call 1-800-522-4700 or visit ksgamblinghelp.com in Kansas. In Louisiana, call 1-877-770-STOP. Visit mdgamblinghelp.org in Maryland. Visit 100gambler.net in West Virginia or call 1-800-522-4700 in Wyoming. Hope is here. Visit gamblinghelplinema.org or call 800-327-5050 for 24/7 support in Massachusetts. Call 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY in New York. All right, let's jump into tonight's 13-game MLB slate, the final solo shot of the season. Thank you all for being here, whether it was with Jim throughout the majority of the season or here with me to close out the final month. But don't worry, there's still plenty of sports going on. Jim and Brandon doing the NFL DFS show on Thursdays, the recap on Mondays. That can be found right here on the same feed for your podcast. And, of course, UFC is back in full swing with Austin Swaim doing that. Also, the Covering the Spread podcast, plenty of sports. And before you know it, in 3 weeks or so, at the end of October, NBA season will be here. And I'll be back with the Daily ISO, bringing NBA DFS breakdowns every single day. But tonight's 13-game MLB slate lock is set for 7:05. When it comes to the weather on tonight's slate, it is going to be a mess for the New York Mets. Just an absolute mess. Rain throughout the day, rain throughout the game, wind blowing in over 15 miles per hour at Citi Field. I don't know if they even play this game. Major note there. Atlanta's on the slate. They're at home. Nice and warm there. The Colorado Rockies are at home. It is nice and warm at Coors Field. So we are dealing with a loaded slate. Let's get to the pitching options starting off tonight. All the way up at the top, Zac Gallen, 10.6. Joe Ryan is 10,000. Dylan Cease, 9.8. Lance Lynn, 9.5. Nathan Eovaldi, 9.4. Brian Wu, 9,200. And Yusei Kikuchi at 9,100. Round out the pitchers that are 9K and above. Now, starting off at the top with Zac Gallen, he has been one of the elite pitchers this season and really is a player that we should be trusting. And one of the things I also think we need to be factoring in today would be the motivation factor for some of these teams. For example, with Arizona, they are in a spot where they can clinch their wild card berth tonight. They have their ace on the mound tonight. Yes, is it a difficult matchup going up against Houston? Yeah, that's on the more difficult side of things. But Gallen is a pitcher that we've trusted all season. He's got that strikeout upside, and this is not a literal must-win. They obviously have a few more games, over the weekend to clinch, but this is as important as it could possibly get. Clinch a spot tonight. Very, very important. Joe Ryan for Minnesota is 10,000, a little bit less expensive compared to Gallen. We could say that the matchup for Joe Ryan is better, but it's also more difficult because it's at Coors Field. So just for the sake of comparison, Colorado, they come with a 25.9% strikeout rate versus right-handed pitching with our current active roster. That's the third worst in the league. Super high strikeout team. Houston, they come in with a 20% strikeout rate versus righties, which is the fourth lowest in the league. Zac Gallen comes in with a 26% strikeout rate this season, which is certainly very solid, but Joe Ryan's up at 29.4%. So Joe Ryan has a higher strikeout rate individually. He has a better matchup going up against Colorado, but he's on the road in Coors Field, which can always present a little bit of danger. Not to mention the fact that Minnesota, they are fully locked into their playoff spot. They won the division. They can't move up. They can't move down. They're not a wild card team. They're locked in. And frankly, Joe Ryan's going to be pitching early next week or whenever it is once they play their first round of the playoffs. Like, he's going to be their SP1 or SP2 along with Sonny Gray. So if Joe Ryan gets in a little bit of trouble, it allows a few runs, a few walks. Why push him out there for 95, 90 some odd pitches? So I love the matchup for Joe Ryan. And frankly, if this game was in Minnesota instead of being in Colorado, I'd have a little bit of a different take on it. So I think Joe Ryan's awesome and the matchup is fantastic. But frankly, he doesn't need to be out there. Gallen does have a tougher matchup. The Astros don't strike out as much, but Gallen and the Diamondbacks are in a very, very important game. So I do think Gallen will have a longer leash compared to Joe Ryan. Dylan Cease is here at 9.8, and he's certainly been showing that strikeout rate that he's been known to have. He's been showing in some of these recent games. The 10.1% walk rate isn't great. The 27.2% strikeout rate is certainly phenomenal. He's a 4.12 Sierra. The matchup against San Diego isn't one that I necessarily love. And, Cease should be out there for 95 plus pitches. There's no reason for him to not be out there. Yeah, Chicago's been eliminated for a while, but there's no reason he shouldn't be out there, putting up one final good start. Lance Lynn is 9,500 for the Dodgers, and Lance Lynn can certainly get the strikeouts going, but he also can get burned by the home runs quite a bit. 2.18 home runs per 9 is not good. Now, he's on the road in San Francisco, and this is certainly a favorable pitcher's park. And San Fran, they do strike out more compared to the league average. They're 22.5% of their current active roster versus righties, which is 13th in the league. So they are slightly worse than the league average. So that is somewhat favorable. And Lance Lynn's only 9,500. So the top tier, we're dealing with positives and negatives, pros and cons for all of these pitchers. If we move a little bit further down, Carlos Rodon is 8,700 for the New York Yankees on the road to take on the Kansas City Royals. And obviously started off the season late due to the injury. He's had some very clear ups and downs since then, but the strikeouts have been on display in some of these recent starts, and he's really limiting the damage. When we get to Kansas City, they come in with a 24.7% strikeout rate versus left-handed pitching with their current active roster, which is the seventh worst in the league. We also looked at Kansas City. They come in with a 91 WRC plus, which is 24th in the league. And they come in with a team ISO sitting at 156 versus lefties, which is 20th in the league. So Rodon at 8,700 is probably one of my favorites mid-tier pitchers when it comes to his salary. So up at the top, I certainly want to trust Gallen due to the level of consistency that he's brought throughout the season. And the fact that I think he's going to have a very long leash tonight. They're going to let him go out there. Joe Ryan, I'm slightly hesitant on just because it's Coors Field. Even this game could be in the middle of July, and I would still be somewhat hesitant about Joe Ryan. I understand the upside that he brings because of his strikeout ability individually and because of the strikeout matchup that Colorado offers, but it's still Coors Field. So Gallen ahead of Joe Ryan. Frankly, I would probably take Cease ahead of Joe Ryan and maybe even Lance Lynn ahead of Joe Ryan. Definitely Cease ahead of Ryan. So Gallen, Cease, Ryan. Ryan's definitely a better pitcher compared to Lance Lynn. But then if we want some salary relief, Carlos Rodon at 8,700 certainly has a good matchup going up against Kansas City. So the top tier is a little bit jumbled, but it does offer a lot of pivots and different ways to approach lineup construction. So pitching, certainly pretty strong on a 13-game slate. There's a lot of pitchers in the mid-tier that you could be going to. Nick Pavetta's certainly got that strikeout rate. I don't love attacking Baltimore if we don't have to. Eovaldi is okay at 9,400. It really comes down to how deep he'd be going into the game. Again, they're going to need, Texas is going to need Eovaldi at the start of next week. Texas has, a 2-game lead over Houston. They're not fully secure into winning the division, but I have a little bit of hesitation when it comes to Eovaldi as well, since he hasn't been out there for super deep since he came back from the IL. So pitching tonight, pretty unique up at the top, and it's honestly a fun way to approach things to close out at least the final solo shot, not the final MLB slate, of course, but the final solo shot of the season. When it comes to stacks on tonight's slate, again, we have Coors Field, Colorado versus Minnesota. Those two teams are very clear. We have the Dodgers on tonight's slate, but as I said, they're in San Francisco. Not my favorite spot. Not the best. I mean, it's a fantastic pitcher's park. I can't even say it's not a great hitter's park. It's a bad hitter's park. It's a great pitcher's park. So I simply don't want to be going there. I have kind of no interest in going to the Dodgers tonight, which is not something we often say. The Braves are on tonight's slate at home. It's great hitting weather in Atlanta, and they have an absolutely fantastic matchup going up against Trevor Williams for the Washington Nationals. And frankly, I think I like Atlanta ahead of Coors Field and absolutely ahead of the Dodgers. So Atlanta's going to be my number one stack on tonight's slate. Surprise, surprise. I don't love talking about them too much, but Trevor Williams for the Nationals is just so bad that we can't overlook this spot, or we can't gloss over it. Atlanta is just in a spot where 10 runs I don't think is out of the question tonight. A 16.7% strikeout rate for Trevor Williams, an 8% walk rate, 2.17 home runs per 9 allowed. He comes in with a 5.12 SIERA and a 42.3% fly ball rate. The home run upside for the Braves should be on full display tonight. They're absolutely a team we want to be going to. And of course, up and down their lineup, there are several options we can be going to. And again, this comes down to the salary of what we have available. That's why I certainly like Carlos Rodon tonight at 8,700, opening up a bit of salary relief. Acuna, Olsen, Albies, Riley, Ozuna, Sean Murphy, Michael Harris, you name it. All of these players are going to be in play tonight. Obviously, getting up to Olsen, Acuna is obviously number one, but he's $5K. That is very, very expensive. So Olsen, Albies, who I specifically like tonight, Austin Riley, Marcell Ozuna, and Murphy are going to be the key targets from Atlanta. Not too much of breaking news there. That is very, very clear. I also think we should be looking at the New York Yankees tonight. Their offense obviously has been a bit of a disappointment, or their team has been a disappointment overall this season compared to what their expectations were coming into the season. But they've kind of shown a little bit of life in some of these recent games, not last night when they got shut out, but some of these recent games. They also have an awesome matchup going up against Jordan Lyles for the Kansas City Royals, who's simply not a good pitcher. The Yankees come in with a 4.82 implied run total tonight. We look to Jordan Lyles, who's allowing 1.99 home runs per 9. He has a low 16% strikeout rate, 6.1% walk rate. Nothing good from Jordan Lyles on top of his 5.17 skill and interactive ERA, along with a 48.8% fly ball rate. As I mentioned, it is nicer in Kansas City in terms of hitting weather. I did mention Rodon that I do like him. That's strictly due to the strikeout upside, but I do like the hitting weather here in Kansas City, specifically going up against Jordan Lyles, we know allows far too many home runs. So I think we can be looking to the Yankees. And outside of Aaron Judge at 4,500, who's been on fire in some of these recent games with multi-home runs, the Yankees are actually relatively affordable. Judge is 4,500. The next most expensive player is Gleyber Torres at 3K. So we actually can look to the Yankees for a bit of value. Giancarlo Stanton is 2,900, and he is striking out at such an insane rate right now. Of course, he has that power upside. I honestly don't love going to Stanton if I don't have to. I'd prefer just to spend up for Judge, take Gleyber, go to DJ LeMahieu at 2,700, go to some of the other value options on the Yankees rather than going to Stanton. And I know, yes, the power upside is there, but I just prefer some other players. So going to the Yankees tonight is actually a really good stack, and Judge should be the priority. Much like the Braves, obviously it's a little bit different due to their salaries, but Acuna is always going to be the priority when it comes to the Braves. If you can get to him, 5K is a lot. 4,500 for Judge is a lot. If you can afford to get them in your lineups, of course, do so. Multi-home run upside for both of them. Acuna is going to be stealing seemingly a base every single game as he set the record this season, or the 40, whatever it is, the 30-70 record, 40-70 record, whatever he set the other night. So I like the Yankees. I like the Braves. That's not too much of a surprise. Coors Field is on the slate. Of course, roll with Coors Field. And then I really like the Arizona Diamondbacks tonight going up against JP France for the Houston Astros. France has kind of been all over the map this season in terms of he looks good at times, he looks bad at times, he's back to looking good, he's back to looking terrible, he's walking too many hitters, he's allowing too many home runs. It's kind of an entirely mixed bag for JP France. And as I mentioned, Arizona, they are in a spot to clinch tonight. So I'm going to be looking to teams that need to win to close out the final 3 days of the regular season. A 17.4% strikeout rate from JP France is nothing we need to worry about. An 8.1% walk rate, 1.25 home runs per nine. He has a 4.96 skill interactive ERA and a 37.4% fly ball rate. When we look at his stats, at least on a game-by-game basis, this is where I'm saying he's all over the place, where low strikeout rate in overall in the season, but then he's up at 25%, he's down at 13%, he's back up at 23%, and the same thing can be said about his walk rate on a game-by-game basis, where it's down at 4.8% against Kansas City in his most recent start, and then against Kansas City the prior week, it's up at 18%, and against San Diego, it's up at 20%. So his control is all over the place, and that has led to a lot of upside, for some of these teams. And I will take a matchup against JP France, given what we have on tonight's slate. And when it comes to Arizona, a team that I generally like stacking because of the power that they have, I've mentioned it time and time again about Arizona. They have multiple hitters we can go into right from the top. And, frankly, they're not too expensive compared to some of the other teams on tonight's slate. They're not as expensive as the Braves. They're not going to be expensive as the hitters at Coors Field. Corbin Carroll at 4,100 is fantastic. We know that. But Christian Walker, Ketel Marte, going to those two, I think is a solid way to start the stack, even if you have to leave off Corbin Carroll, because they're both 3,600. Adding in Tommy Pham at 2,900, adding in Lourdes Gurriel at 2,900, adding in Perdomo at 2,700, whatever it might be. This is where we get a little bit of value from Arizona, really. And whether it's Alec Thomas, whether it's Jake McCarthy, whatever them end up making the lineup at 25 and 2,400, we're actually getting a good bit of value for a team that's in a really good spot. So, if you have to leave off Acuna from a Brave stack, I don't love it, but it makes sense. If you have to leave off Corbin from an Arizona stack, it kind of makes sense because it allows you to full stack each team while still paying up for some potential pitching options. So, yeah, if we could afford every single hitter, it would be Carroll, it'd be Judge, it'd be Acuna every single night, but that's obviously not the case. So give me Olsen and Riley and Murphy and Ozuna and those hitters from Atlanta, and then give me Walker and Marte and Pham and Gurriel from the Diamondbacks, and it still allows you some flexibility when it comes to pitching. So tonight's slate, I think Arizona, the Yankees, the Braves, all very clear. Coors Field, also very clear. I wouldn't mind going to St. Louis. I know they're not the best team in the world, but I like the matchup against Brandon Williamson. Maybe take some one-offs from St. Louis. As I said, Cease is a good pitcher for the White Sox. He certainly has that strikeout upside, but the walks and the home runs continue to be an issue for him. And San Diego certainly has a plenty of power hitters in their lineup. So I wouldn't mind taking a few one-offs from San Diego as well. Let's close things out with the dinger calls. Ozzie Albies, number one for the Atlanta Braves. I just love this matchup with his lefty splits going up against Trevor Williams for the Washington Nationals. Very clear upside for Atlanta tonight. And like I said, I'm not going to be surprised if they put up 10 runs. It's not going to be a surprise any single night that they put up 10 runs, but specifically tonight against Trevor Williams, a lot of runs early and often against him. And then, of course, going to Aaron Judge. So Judge is the easy answer on tonight's slate. I think the matchup against Jordan Lyles is just way, way too good to be passing up, given the potential fly ball issues, we know the fly ball issues that he has with a 48.8% fly ball rate this season. Judge could certainly put that on full display. And then Ozzie Albies, I would say, is a bit of a longer shot. He's not one of the main power hitters for the Braves behind Riley, Acuna, and Olsen. So give me Albies, give me Judge for the 2 home run calls to close out the final episode of the Solo Shot this season. Thank you all for being here. Again, plenty of shows across the FanDuel Podcast Network, whether it's football, whether it's UFC. NBA will be back at the end of October 25th, 26th, wherever that start date is, running throughout the entirety of the season. All right, so that does it for today. As always, this is one of the many shows on the FanDuel Podcast Network. You can find it anywhere, whether it's Apple Podcasts, whether it's Spotify. The video version can be found on the FanDuel YouTube page, found on FanDuel TV Plus, and be found on FanDuel.com/watch. You can follow me on Twitter at Tom_Vecchio1. Until next time, good luck in your contests.